Now, in order to understand how to properly use the terminal and what are the information that the terminal gives you, we have to understand the structure of our computer, how it is organized. It is simple, but it's important to understand because otherwise it would be just me telling you a list of command on the terminal without you understanding much, without being independent about it. And so I could tell you this command do this, and this command do that, and this command do that. But if you don't know really what you're doing, you can make a mess on the terminal, and you're not going to go very far with it. So, without further ado, let's understand this simple structure yet important. If we go to Finder in your computer, you're gonna see that this is your folders and everything, and this folder belongs to your home folder, which is MacBook. And what I'm interested in right now is that this folder belongs to this other folder, which is user. If you double click here, you're gonna see that this is your hard drive, and in your hard drive there are a number of folders and files, and then there is a user folder, which I'm very interested in, which is the organization of your computer. Now, this folder, Guest MacBook Mark Shared, every one of which contains some stuff, like MacBook contains all my stuff. These are not just folders. These are users. You can think of them as identities. This is my identity right now. I am MacBook. Okay. For example, I could go here and log out as MacBook. And if I were to click on this, the computer will prompt me to a screen where it would tell me, how do you want to log in? Do you want to log in as a Mark, as Guest, as a MacBook? Okay. But right now I am MacBook, which brings me to the first of 4 points that I would like you to understand. The first one is this: every file or directory means folder, every file or directory belongs to some user. So for example, here, all these files here, every one of these files, they belong to some users. And now you can understand, I think, better the difference between the folders and the users. These files here, not all of them have to belong to the user MacBook. There can be files here, and I'm going to show you in a minute, that are in the folder MacBook, but they do not belong to MacBook. They belong to another user. Okay, this is the first part, very important, that I want you to know. The second part is that users are usually organized in groups. So some user can be grouped in one group. For example, I don't know, Guest, MacBook, and Mark can belong to the group A, and I don't know, Mark and Shared can belong to the group B, and Mark alone can belong to a group which is contain just himself, and so on. So these are the users are grouped in groups. Okay, so the second point is that every file directory, not only it belongs to some user, but it is also assigned to some group, which, as I told you, contain one or more users. Let's start seeing an example. If you go to any file folders in your computer, you right click and you go to get info, you're going to get the information about the owners, about the permissions, the groups. And you can see here, for example, that this file belongs to MacBook, which is me, and I can read and write it. But this file is also assigned to stuff. Stuff is not a user, as you know, but you can see from the icon, the two people icon, that this is a group. So this file is also assigned to a group, which is stuff. Okay, and they can only read it, and we're going to understand this permission right now. So the question is, what can every user do with this file? Well, what can you do with a file? In the Linux system, every file, this is the third point, every file can be either readable, writable, or executable, or a combination of those. Can be just readable, or maybe both writable and executable, etc. And now the last question is, who can do what to a file? What user can do what to every file? And this is the first and last point that I want you to know, which is the permission to read, write, or execute a file depend on the user, and hence change from user to user. So let's see an example of this. This file here, again, new text. If we go back to get info, I can see that the owner MacBook can read and write it, which is quite understandable. I'm the owner, I'm supposed to do whatever I want with this file. Of course, this is not an executable file, so there is not the executable part here. Then the user belonging to stuff, the user that belongs to stuff, they can only read it. Okay? And as a last thing, there's always the everyone. Everyone is just someone who is not the owner and who is not the user in the group stuff. Okay, and they always tell you, if you're not this or that, what can you do? In this case, you just can read it. And as last example, I'm gonna see the Z text. If I get info on this Z text, you're gonna see this, which I created as this on purpose. The owner of this file is Mark, which can read and write, and me, MacBook, I can only read it. I am not the owner. And the same goes for guest, you can only read it, and the same goes for the group. You see, this is a group, the group underscore guest, they can only read it, and everyone else can only read it. So this is the perfect example, I think, to understand that these files here, yes, they might belong to this folder, but these are not just folder, these are user, these are identities. So for example, this files is in this folder, but it belongs to Mark, which is another user. Now, with all of this, we can finally understand and start seeing how the terminal works. See you in the next lesson.